wandered past and said, "We go," in a very positive light. So, look, at the moment, Ted's optimistic. Are you, Naomi, Damon?
It's looking a lot better than it was yesterday. I mean, just even looking at those few images there, the track looks good. I mean, we talk about this elevation a lot on the grid, but actually it's the run from the grid down to turn 4 that's the biggest elevation change on this track, and that's why you always have the water flowing down to turn 4. But we didn't quite get a snapshot of it just yet there, but I am positive we're going to get this session going, and I think it's going to be sensational because there's a lot of, not much room for error, I should say, on this track.
Much greater premium on drivers and their ability to push in very difficult to judge the pace in conditions like this. I mean, they're all very talented, but it's an opportunity for those that are hampered perhaps by a less competitive car to make a name for themselves.
You go back to 2016 and that man and the drive that he had here, which was sensational. Okay, yeah, the pit stop strategy helped him a little bit as well, but Max Verstappen is a master in wet conditions. Quite often the cream rises to the top. You know, you would put your money against him in this sort of... Oh, well, it just feels like he's got an extra bite to him at the moment because of everything that's been going on.
Totally, and I think this is the best case scenario for Max, to be honest. I think he'll be so confident in these conditions. He's got a 5-place grid penalty anyway, so this is probably the position where he can make the most differences in these rain conditions.
Okay, well, it's a full day for you. I'm not sure if it's raining at home as it has been here in Brazil, but we've got qualifying and a race to get through. Stay with us.
Well, not since 1984 in Dallas, when the legendary Jacques Lafitte wandered into the paddock with his pajamas on, have we all been here on a Sunday morning this early. But we are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready for qualifying, ladies and gentlemen, on this Sunday in Sao Paulo. And what a super Sunday it promises to be if the rain relents enough to let qualifying and then the Grand Prix happen. And at the moment, the cars are coming out of their garages, queuing up at the end of the pit lane, and we look set to get this qualifying hour underway. A 2.67 mile circuit, full throttle for nearly 59% of the lap in the dry, 15 turns, an elevation change of around about 43 meters. It's going to be a test out there. We couldn't have qualified yesterday. It was way too wet, but it's a lot better here on this Sunday morning. But wet weather tyres and intermediate tyres are certainly the order right at the start. Will we get onto the slicks? Well, maybe if we're here tomorrow we might, but there's plenty of those left for the drivers. And these are the live scenes then around Interlagos, where the fans have been queuing since the wee small hours, and Ted Kravitz has been here overnight, and Karun Chandhok has been as excited as I've ever seen him at this time on a Sunday morning, because we're finally going to get some action.
And it's a Super Sunday, and I'm a morning person, you know this.
Absolutely.
Listen, I'm really happy that we've got good enough conditions, I think, to get going. I was looking at the safety car and the medical car going down the track. I stood at the Senna S as we were doing the laps earlier, and yeah, there's a bit of standing water, but Formula One Grand Prix cars are the best water soakers on the planet. So, and they're queuing up. They're already queuing up at the end of the pit lane.
Let's pay tribute to the organisers, to the FIA, and to Formula One management as well, for taking a very bold step, not just in postponing yesterday's qualifying, but bringing everyone in early on this Sunday, because there is a little break in the weather around about midday-ish.
There could be an increase in rain in about 15 minutes or so.
Which is why they're all queuing up now, because these might be the best conditions for the first part of qualifying. But if we'd have just waited for a normal time, a 10 o'clock qualifying, and then maybe a 3 o'clock race time, there's a chance it couldn't happen. We've given ourselves the best possible chance, and this man here, receiving a 5-place grid penalty, probably has the best possible outcome. He had to change his power unit, his internal combustion engine, gets that grid penalty, but we know the wet weather levels things up, and we know how good he is here in the wet.
If I think back to that awfully wet day in Spa 2021, where we all stood there splashing around the puddles, we criticised F1 and the FIA for not being flexible with the schedule, right? And we ended up with that messy, sort of fairly shambolic 2-lap race. And I completely echo what you just said there. We've, as a sport, it feels like they've learned the lessons from that and been flexible. I think Dallas 84, I heard you saying this morning. So
Jack Lafitte in his pyjamas.
Yeah, that was the last time a race was brought forward for weather conditions. On that occasion, because it was too hot in Dallas. So, yeah, the year I was born, 40 years ago. So, yeah, well done to everyone involved. And also the fans, as Ted was saying earlier. So many people queuing up when we drove in this morning.
Dallas 84, where J.R. Ewing waved the green flag to get things going, and our very own soap opera superstar, Ted Kravitz, is down in the pit lane.
I was 10 years old, wasn't there, but I was probably watching it on the telly. Hello, Crofty, hello, Karun, hello, everybody from the pit lane. You know what? I've seen me some strange old stuff in F1 over the last few weeks. I've seen me a giant lizard on track in Singapore. Remember Larry? What was it, Lawrence?
Yeah.
I've seen me a somersaulting Ferrari mechanic in Mexico. But Crofty, I ain't ever seen me a 7:30 a.m. qualifying session, but I have now, and I'm impressed at how keen the drivers are to actually get going. Interestingly, some of the drivers, or the ones who are closest to their garages, have had their mechanics sort of come out and just looking at the drivers, seeing their wet tyres, seeing what's going on. All the drivers who are in the queue waiting to get out have turned off their cars. They're now just firing them back up again, and it looks like we are ready to go. So it's all full wet, and you never know. We'll talk about, you know, what could be the only session that counts. Any of the sessions could be the only ones that count, but hopefully we're going to get all three of them, Crofty.
Yes, fingers crossed on that one. 20 drivers then making their way out of the pit lane, including Ollie Behrman for Haas, deputising for Kevin Magnussen, who was ill at the first part of this weekend, and Haas have decided to keep the young Brits in the car for the rest of the weekend, and he admitted yesterday he's never really driven one of these cars in the wet. This is a massive test for him. The fans are here, you can hear the cheers. In the commentary box, it's Karun Chandhok alongside me, Bernie Collins at Sky Race Control, and some bloke she's with called Radar. You keep talking about it.
Yes, my friend Ray. So, a few things to give you just before they get into the session properly, Crofty. Teams are split on what the weather's going to do. I've heard some being told 15 minutes to more rain. I've heard some told 2 minutes to more rain. So a lot of confusion out there on what Radar is actually saying. But you know, there is a bit of a blank spot just to the north on the radar. Another thing just to tell you about this, teams in this session will fuel for the session. So what we mean by that, they're not allowing time for the car to come back into the garage and be refueled. They'll be planning pit stops if they need to change tyres. And just as a reminder, they only have 2 sets of these full wet tyres.
And no tyre blankets to warm these wet weather tyres up either. That's to save money, and I'm sure the drivers would prefer they'd spent a bit more, Karun Chandok, and they had a nice toasty blanket to keep these wet weather tyres up to a temperature.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it is a little bit tricky with the wet, because when you first go out of the pits, you're understandably cautious. Let's listen in here. Path throttle all the way through, in contrast to easy flat out in the dry. Even here, we get the standing water. So because you are understandably cautious on these first few laps, tyre temperatures will anyway plummet. So it's a bit tricky. We've got a yellow flag already in Sector 3. Liam Lawson seems to have spun or gone off the track as Jun Sao. And one of the problems will be, Crofty, if you get stuck in the grass, it's boggy. It is like being at Glastonbury on a muddy day, and you could get stuck. So we haven't seen if he has, but we can see on our track map that he's not moving.
No, exactly. It is wetter than a fisherman's boot off track here, and it's not particularly dry on the track itself. And Liam Lawson, I think, is just getting going once more. Lando Norris on a lap then, and Alex Albon was first out of the pit. Spray visibility is going to be a big issue for the drivers, but we say it all the time. The best way to dry out and clear up a Formula One track is to get 20 cars on it and to disperse that water.
So it's gone green in the last sector. Liam Lawson seemed to have found his way. I was just looking on the onboard at race control. Found his way to that outer perimeter road, which, remember, Kimi Raikkonen drove there once.
Gate.
And got lost. Yes, so I don't know. He seems to have got himself moving. So we'll see if he rejoins, but the track is green. That's most important for everybody else.
So it's the usual Q1. Slowest 5 get eliminated at the end of the 18 minutes. These could be the laps that count. We don't know. Is the weather going to get any worse? Is the weather going to hold off? Is the track going to improve anymore? The drivers have got to try and find a balance between pushing as hard as they can and staying safe and on the track itself. And it's a 1:31.6 for Lando Norris when he crosses the line. Obviously, as each lap unfolds, the fuel will burn off, the cars will get lighter, and that will help them as well. And this, Jun Sao, is what happened to Liam Lawson.
Just locked up the left front there. So he luckily didn't get onto the grass, stayed on that perimeter or bailed out of it early, and I presume is able to turn around and get going. So he's lucky there, but the front left just grabbed. That's cold brakes, Crofty.
Yeah.
But these brakes operate at a minimum of 400 degrees. If you get them below that, you get what's known as cold grab, and they just snatch. Got another yellow, Zhou Guanyu.
Exactly the same place as Liam Lawson.
And it's yellow there, so we're coming through it now, but it's gone green. So he looks like he's got going as we ride on board with Charles Leclerc. Esteban Ocon has shown a lot of early confidence in these conditions, to the top of the times, 1.6 seconds ahead of Lando Norris.
Yep, some drivers absolutely love it in the wet. George Russell is no slouch whatsoever. You talked about that race in Spa, that 2-lap race in 2021. George Russell still thinks it was the greatest day because it was his first ever podium in Formula One. Never seen a happier man on a plane going home as I did George Russell that particular night.
But his qualifying lap was outstanding,
Yeah,
wasn't it? That's what set it up, because we obviously the race night on the safety car. This was Zhou Guanyu. We mentioned it had gone yellow, and again, see, that snatching of the front left. Again, just cold grab, cold brakes, cold tyres early in this session, and the drivers will all need to be aware of that.
This is Lance Stroll, who had his moment and found the grass. Now this is tricky. This is like a beginner going ice skating, and well, he's Canadian, Lance Stroll. He's very good on the ice, and he managed to find that grip. Well done to him.
Remind me to show you the video of when I went ice skating in Canada. It was not good. That's basically what I look like.
Bambi's first steps it was.
Yeah.
On the radio, Valtteri Bottas has already been told
on the track.
boxeritas.
Yeah, a bit of aquaplaning down to turn 4. Otherwise, it's not too bad, just low grip.
So I wonder if we're going to get intermediate tyres from some others as well. Bottas going for an early bid on the intermediate tyres to just, well, to try and improve their fortunes. Sauber have been slowest in terms of qualifying on pure pace alone for about the last 6 qualifying sessions. So it's worth a gamble at that end of the grid.
Well, the Pirelli wet tyres clear the water. That's what I was saying before. They're the best water soakers. It's 65 litres per second, isn't it, that they can clear out. So essentially they can empty a bathtub in 3 seconds or something like that. So
well, I can do that. It's called cannonball.
So yeah, the water is clearing away, and Sauber have taken the bold decision to roll the dice and go early. I always think as a driver, you don't want to be the first. You kind of want to be the second or third person to make that switch. I think, and there's two things. I think when you're making the switch from when you're going down the steps, right, from wets to inters to slicks, I think you rely on the team and the strategist, and we'll come to Bernie in a second on that. I think when you're going the other way, the drivers need to make the call. So I'm going to hand over to the strategist to make this decision. What do you think, Bernie?
A driver never puts it so politely as that often, Corinne. But yeah, so just trying to do a bit of calculation there. We're currently doing 1:30, 1:29 is the fastest lap time out there at the minute. I think about a 1:28 is about the point that the Inter crossover would come. And then about a 1:20 is about the point that we should be considering the switch to dries. The problem that Bottas, or the reason I think he's gone early, is they're expecting more rain on the radar. So this is the window. They're trying to preempt when the Inter's going to be good enough, but looks a bit early.
So this is Lance Stroll going off once again. We've just seen Valtteri Bottas on the exit of turn 5, the exit of Decido de Largo, go off the track. And that is very much George Russell holding up Carlos Sainz, and they almost touch as well. Now, whether the stewards take the conditions into consideration or not, when they're looking at a possible impeding, I'm not sure, but that did look like a bit of impeding there.
Two issues in the wet. A, the mirrors, it's just impossible to see anything with the spray. You just can't see who's coming behind you. And B, the different pace of cars in these conditions is much more extreme than in the dry. So for the engineers, it's hard to work out the closing speeds.
Now, Lewis Hamilton, who had an exit in SQ2, sprint qualifying 2 in the dry, currently finds himself slowest of all because he's had a lap time deleted. And if the rain is going to start to get heavier, that might have an impact on Lewis Hamilton's qualifying progression. He's down there with his former teammate Valtteri Bottas at the moment. Sergio Perez goes 4th fastest. Max Verstappen, his teammate, is 6th fastest. Lando Norris currently 9th fastest. And in that bottom 5 also Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Ollie Behrman.
There doesn't seem to be that much standing water, so think about inters.
But I think Bottas is showing that the Inters aren't yet there. He's a second down on Tsunoda in just the first sector of the lap alone. So I think, especially because the last sector, looks to be the wettest at the moment. This run up to the line still looks a bit tricky for Inters. I think the wet is still the quicker tyre, but we'll see. It's a very dynamic session here.
Yeah.
And they're going to be needing to make that call towards the end. You'll have to make that call with probably 5 minutes to go. As we've got a yellow.
Franco Colapinto has gone off at the Curva do Sol, and we got a red flag. And this could be Colapinto touching the barriers then. I can't quite see from our commentary box where that Williams is, and I think he's gone in quite hard because the medical car has been deployed, and there he is. Franco Colapinto has gone into the barriers. Now, the red flag is out. I can see Colapinto moving, and I'm hoping that he's absolutely okay, and he's radioed to the team to say he is. So first and foremost, that's the first thing to think about. Second thing, this is not good news for either of the two Mercedes drivers, George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. Now, the clock has stopped at 8 minutes and 50 seconds, but if the rain is coming in and there's more rain to come and the track gets wetter, those two Mercedes are in a very, very vulnerable position.
And we've had this in the last couple of years, haven't we? A red flag in qualifying, conditions getting worse, stopping other people from improving. Ironically, Colapinto is into Q2, whereas he's effectively denied his teammate, Alex Albon, a chance to improve. So Albon down with the two Mercedes drivers and the two Saubers in the relegation zone at the moment. But I'm looking out of the window, Crofty, and yeah, it's raining, but it doesn't look too bad still.
Yeah, but Bernie Collins, what is the radar saying? Is there more rain coming in the next few minutes? Hang on with that one. Let's just go on board with Franco Colapinto. You can feel the edginess.
Yeah, but he's taking the wider line. That's okay in the wet. Let's listen.
Oh.
Yeah, just wheel spin. Just the rear right tyre was on, there's like train tracks. You've got to stay within the train tracks. He took the wide line. That's okay. You can find grip there. Now watch.
Sorry, mate.
There. The rear right tyre just got on the slightly wetter part. He was slightly outside the train tracks, and unfortunately, as he sort of said there, pure driver error. And mechanics not... the trouble at Crofty is also, we've got a very tight window between the end of qualifying and the start of the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Normally they go overnight to fix the car. We haven't got that. We've got, between the end, we'll be talking 3.5 hours.
Although by the looks of it, there's not a huge amount of damage, but that front right corner is probably going to have to be rebuilt.
I think the rear right touched as well.
Okay.
I think it pulled it round, and there was contact also the rear. So, yeah, I think the mechanics know they've got a tricky morning ahead.
So the situation at the moment, 8 minutes and 50 seconds to go of Q1. When we restart, the clock will start again, and at Mercedes, both Hamilton and Russell down in that bottom 5, along with Bottas, Joe, and Albon, whose teammate Franco Colapinto has just crashed. Ted Kravitz, down to you.
So first thing, looking down to the Williams pit wall that I can see down here, lots of discussions already having about how much damage that is, whether that's actually repairable, that car, and in what time frame before the start of the Grand Prix, if it goes off on schedule 12:30 Brazilian time. They were wincing, Crofty. The mechanics were wincing when they had a look at that on the TV. I'm sure you saw it on the feed.
Yeah, we did.
Glad to see, of course, that Franco Colapinto is okay, as are the Argentine fans in the grandstands. But it's just on this, as the rain continues to fall at the same rate it has done, as I can see live outside in the pit lane throughout the session. It's not getting any worse, but it's not getting any better. The other challenge for the teams is that on these old full wets now, they're just overheating and not getting any grip. They're saying that they'll either need new full wets or intermediates get through into Q2 if and when it
Ollie, absolutely, and Ollie Behrman saying that we need to go on to intermediate tyres just to survive in this session, and currently he's about 3/10 to the right side of the elimination zone. His first qualifying in the wet, his first experience of an F1 car in the wet. Franco Colapinto's first qualifying session in the wet. Maybe what we've just seen there, Karun Chandok, is an example of, well, A, his inexperience, and B, why he might not be totally ready to go and join a bigger team just yet.
It's been a great example for anybody about how first impressions count in any job. You know, he arrived with a bang, didn't he? Great first few races. But actually now when you start to get into it, you see in Mexico, he was quite some way off Albon's time. In the sprint quali on Friday, again, some way off Albon's time. And going, you know, there's a lot of rumors about putting him straight in the Red Bull. There's a lot of excitement about putting him straight in the Red Bull. I think for someone this young and inexperienced, dropping him straight in the Red Bull alongside Max Verstappen could be career damaging for him. I think, you know, he's clearly very talented, clearly very fast, but you can't just shortcut experience.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether he'd be better off buying some experience, buying some time, I should say, in RB, and maybe ending up in a Red Bull later on.
3 minutes to go till the restart. They're all queuing up again at the end of the pit lane. Bernie Collins.
Yeah, so just looking at the radar, Crofty, as you could see in the images there when Karun was talking, the rain has increased. That was coming on the radar. I think there's maybe a few minutes of this heavier rain, 4 or 5 minutes, and then it will ease off again. Not stop, but ease off again. So the conditions for me now are back to even more into the wet, full wet condition than we had at the end of that session, and possibly not getting to an inter in the next 4 or 5 laps. The guys will be fit to complete to the end of the session.
Bottas going back onto the wet tyres, so that gamble on the intermediates didn't work. I just saw a shot there of Lee Stevenson, who was a former at Red Bull, Max Verstappen's mechanic there, and he's now the chief mechanic at Sauber. Obviously, Jonathan Wheatley will be heading there as well.
As the team principal. Right, Karun Chandok, we've got 2 minutes to go to the restart. It's time for Sunday morning trivia. You can play along at home, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope you do. Japan 2004, Japan 2010, Australia 2013, USA 2015, and Japan 2019. Sunday morning qualifying.
There's a lot more rain.
This heavier rain is expected to last for 2 more minutes, and then it will reduce back to class 1 or class 2.
Sunday morning qualifying, but what have all those sessions got in common, Karun Chandok?
They've had a German at the top of the time. So basically, if we follow your usual statistical madness,
Nico Hulkenberg, the Holcomb pole for a second time in Interlagos.
In fairness, in 2010, in mixed conditions, he was brilliant. And 2012, mixed conditions, he was brilliant. Should have won that race. He and Jenson Button were 45 seconds ahead of the pack in 2012 until he crashed.
And I'm not laughing, I'm admiring Karun Chandhok's knowledge there. And that's why 224 races into his career now, Nico Hülkenberg still searching for his first podium in Formula One.
And second pole position.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, 2016 we were here, we had a full race in the wet. Hülkenberg was driving for Force India as it was then, and he should have had a podium that day, but he crashed into some debris on the main straight and then had to retire from the race.
He's led 3 races in his life, I think 2 of which have been here at Interlagos. But today is his day for a pole position. Haas's second pole here at Interlagos. Hülkenberg's second pole. It's written in the stars, Karun Chandhok.
I'm slightly terrified because if it happens, Anthony Davidson and I are doomed. We will never hear the end of your statistical nonsense that you wheel at us every weekend. Behrman on intermediates, but they're wheeling back in.
Yeah, because the rain's got heavier.
Yeah.
And I think there's absolutely no point in sending him out on intermediate tyres at the moment. Here's the green light then. And let's get going again. 19 are left in this on the track. Franco Colapinto's Williams has been recovered. So far, he is through into Q2, but the times might get better. And well, there's a nice little queue for a Sunday morning, and Alex Albon is going to have to wait until the RB of Yuki Tsunoda comes out of his garage, and you can see Ollie Behrman being pushed back into his.
Yeah, so the cars are heading back up. A very confusing strategy there from Ollie Behrman's side of the pit garage, especially as they've sent Hülkenberg out on the full wets. And quite clearly, when the cars haven't been running around and it's been raining, the track's going to be more wet. The Bottas experiment didn't work. So I'm not entirely sure what made them think that this could have worked.
I think driver might have said, let's do it. They agreed with drivers. You know how pushy you drivers can be, Karun Chandhok. And they realised the rain was coming down a bit heavier and it was time to wheel him back again. But at least they hadn't had to wheel him too far because that Haas garage is near the exits of the pit lane. Right, back on with it then. We've had various double waved yellows and yellow flags. We've had a red flag as well, and I dare say we might get a few more between now and the end of the session as well.
Ollie Behrman being engineered by Mark Slade, I believe, at these days, isn't he? Yes. Who was Kimi Raikkonen's engineer, I think, back in 03 when Kimi won that race on the road here and then awkwardly had to give the trophy away when they got to Imola to Giancarlo Fisichella in very wet conditions like this, which is why I mentioned it.
Yes, one of those red flag races. We've had a couple of them at the Brazilian Grand Prix over the years. Now here's George Russell leaving the pit lane. Dare say he really wants the cars in front to get on with it. That was Ollie Behrman just in front of him. He's overtaken a couple of cars there, which is a lot to do.
Always put me in the wall.
Kind of put yourself at a risky position there, George.
They're not obliged to make way.
Yeah.
If there is a gap, absolutely fine, but only if there is a gap can you get yourself past.
Yeah, this Piastri, look at him crawling around trying to get space, but he's got Sainz coming up behind him, so he gets going. But that's not good for the brake temps or tyre temps. So when he gets into this long run up to the line and to the first corner, just watch the braking. I hope he stick with it, because I'd like to see what his grip level is like on the braking there.
On the straights, Tsunoda a second faster than Oscar Piastri, but there's a lot more corners than there are straights here. McLaren have actually, because the car was out of parc fermé, gone back to a much higher downforce rear wing setting for these sort of conditions. So putting a load more drag onto the car, but helping through the corners and helping to generate tyre temperature as well.
You can see visibly, though, the extra water that's come down during the red flag has made the track less favourable. You know, he's on a personal best, Piastri, but just looking at the timing pages, it's not lighting up, is it? No. It's just, I think it's going to take a couple of laps, and what are we now? So we'll get probably 3 more timed laps for people who are just about to begin. 3, maybe 4 if you're at the line. So there's still time to try and improve. And
yeah, Gasly improves, goes 9th fastest. Just to let you know, we were riding on board with Oscar Piastri. This might be a day that you fancy riding on board to see just what the driver's view is or isn't out on the track. You can do so. We've got all 20 on board.
And track is still fast. People matching their lap times, and we will get faster.
Sky Sports app is what you need in your Sky Sports login, or if you're watching on Sky Glass, Sky Q, Sky Stream, or now, press the interactive button on your remote control. Piastri half a second down through the first 2 sectors.
Yeah, I'm going to slightly disagree with Brian Bozzi there. I think the only people who are matching and improving are people like Hamilton, who didn't get a representative lap earlier. I think the track isn't as good, But if you're like Piastri or Hamilton, who haven't done a proper lap, you will improve, as Piastri's done there.
So he goes 5th fastest. Hamilton on a best first sector. We can pick him up now on this part of the lap towards Sao. There's a very slow-moving Lance Stroll keeping out of his way, and keeping out of his way well enough. Little pivot slide there from Lewis Hamilton to straighten up the car out of Sao.
But he's right behind Alonso. Look at this. The visibility is going to be really tricky for him.
Yeah, but it's a slipstream, though.
Yeah, but in these conditions, Croffy, I'd rather see where I'm going.
Well, there is that, but Lewis Hamilton could do this with his eyes shut. George Russell did it with his eyes shut for us in the studio. He's been here many, many times before. Hamilton goes 14th fastest, so still not exactly putting a lot of distance between himself and the bottom 5. Alex Albon goes 7th fastest, and that's a bit better for the Williams. They've probably got about 3 more laps to go for this part of qualifying, as Max Verstappen goes quickest through the middle sector and through the spray. Here comes George Russell. George Russell is currently slowest of the 20 times we have.
He's not having a good time with it, is he? He's, I'm not sure the stewards will be happy about that rejoin. No. Straight onto the racing line. Certainly, if I was Alex Albon, I wouldn't be happy about that. George should have stayed to the right-hand side of the track.
Well, here he is. You can see how much trouble he's having trying to find a straight-ish line through Decido de Largo, the back stepping out at him all the way through.
The last sector's not there, Crofty. Verstappen, you mentioned it, the best middle sector, but the last sector, nobody's really improving. I think that's where the standing water is still an issue.
Well, look here as well, intermediates for the final part of the track, but then that's Carlos Sainz just crossing the line. As soon as you cross the line, you're into the wet weather stuff as well. But I don't know, that doesn't look good for intermediates to me at the moment, and no one is trying those intermediates. Russell's done a 22.6 for the first sector. He's done a very good middle sector of a 47.4, and he is well up on a time he needs to get out of that bottom
He's got
5.
Traffic, though. He's got traffic. That's a slow-moving Lance Stroll in front. Again, visibility going to be an issue. Oh, Russell's had to back out of it. Yeah. He's had to back out of it there.
I think he came across that Aston Martin just at the wrong time, but he backed out of it, still went 2nd fastest. And now we've got a yellow flag and a double yellow flag in sector 3. Just very briefly, Hulkenberg, I think it was, that went off the track. But clear now. We get down to the last just over 2 minutes. Joe, Behrman, Lawson, Bottas and Hamilton in the bottom 5. Hamilton improving on this lap through the first sector.
Verstappen not improving on that lap.
And he's had a lap time deleted as well. That 1:30.003 for Max Verstappen has been deleted because of that double yellow flag that we just saw at turn 12 at Sao, and the double yellow flag coming out for this incident involving Nico Hulkenberg. And we'll see as he just locks up, slides his way over the crest and onto the grass. I know you're feeling, Nico, I know you're feeling. And at the moment, he is right on the fringes. Verstappen's deleted lap puts him down in 12th place.
Hamilton still in the drop zone and slower in the middle sector compared to his previous best. So at least he'll have a clean run to the line. Last time he had to follow Alonso, so he might have the chance to improve here. As he comes up, probably through the last kink, past the pit lane entry. And does it enough? No.
Right.
Wow.
So this is make or break now for Lewis Hamilton.
This is the lap.
This is the lap that he needs to produce to try and get himself out of the bottom 5. Traffic-wise, he should be okay. From turn 9, Pinarino, the pine tree, all the way towards Sao, there's a heap of cars there that are all kind of getting in each other's way a little bit. Hamilton well up through the first sector. Ollie Behrman is down there with him. Liam Lawson is down there with him. Bottas and Joe are down there with him in the bottom 5.
He had a big slide at Decido de Largo there, the 4th corner. Piastri's backed out of it. Piastri's gotten out of the way. Here we are through Ferradura. Look at his hands. Tentative. Another snap of oversteer as you climb over that crest. Get the nose in here. It's not sticking, it's just sliding on the top of the tile.
Lando Norris is also down very near the drop zone. We mentioned Max Verstappen in 12th. Norris, the nearest contender to Verstappen in the championship. He's had a lap time deleted, and that wouldn't have put him any higher up. But Bottas climbs out of the bottom 5, and Norris is now very much on the cusp, and he is not improving on this lap. This is not looking good for Lando Norris, because Hamilton is improving but is still a little bit outside the time that he needed. And Hamilton's in that bottom 5 and Hülkenberg's in that bottom 5. Checker flag is out, and this has got to count for Lewis Hamilton. Is he going to get out of that bottom 5 and keep his Sao Paulo qualifying alive on this Sunday morning? Crosses the line, goes 14th fastest, and that pushes Lando Norris into the bottom 5. Norris needs a middle and a final sector of his life here to escape from the relegation zone.
But he's got traffic, Crofty. He's got Pierre Gasly and Nico Hülkenberg in front of him. This could be tricky in terms of visibility.
Damn car, man.
Hamilton not happy with his car. Norris puts in a personal best in the middle sector. Alex Albon goes fastest overall for Williams. Esteban Ocon's gone fastest in the first sector. Ollie Behrman lifts himself out of that bottom 5. Here comes Lando Norris then along the main straight. Gasly goes 4th fastest. Norris crosses the line, pushes Hamilton down to 15th, goes 14th fastest only, and make that 15th as Lawson goes into the safe places, and Hamilton into the relegation zone and out of qualifying, along with Behrman and Colapinto and Hülkenberg. And it's Zhou Guan Yu that can deny Lando Norris as he crosses the line now, stays slowest, and Lando Norris escapes by the skin of his teeth, while the championship leader goes fastest overall.
And both Haas cars out. Wow, what a shocker for them. They've been on such a great run of scoring points recently, but this is the biggest shock.
Lewis Hamilton out of qualifying. He started last here, or 20th I should say, in 2017. He started 17th in 2009. At the moment, Lewis Hamilton 16th on the grid for this afternoon's Sao Paulo Grand Prix.
What has happened there? I mean, he is a master of driving the rain. You'd have to say, one of the top 3 greatest drivers.
And we are through.
Lewis has got to be one of the top 3 greatest drivers of wet weather driving of all time. At a track where he's won in the wet.
Damn car, man.
We heard him there, just not happy with the car. Unbelievable.
Why? Yeah, we just take it through it.
Not happy with the car, not happy with traffic either. Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes definitely not happy with that result. Zhou Guan Yu is out. The 2 Hasses of Hülkenberg and of Behrman. The Williams of Colapinto who crashed. And
still P7.
in Q1 for the 3rd time this year, in the 2nd time in the last 3 races, Hamilton's out.
And I'm minus 6 tenths.
Welcome back to Interlagos, trickiest of tricky days for all drivers out on the track. Max Verstappen going fastest in Q1.
Lovely.
He's happy, but he'll get a 5-place grid penalty whatever happens for the rest of this qualifying. And the rest of this qualifying, Hamilton won't take part. And Karim Chandok, I think we can have a look at just how undrivable it was for Lewis Hamilton out on the circuit. Through so many corners, he lost so much time.
Yeah, the middle sector of the lap was absolutely dreadful for him. This is down at the Cedar del Lago, just no grip. He slid off the track there. I mean, that's obviously track limits, but he just had zero grip. It was just sliding on the top surface of the tyre. And sometimes, you know, what happens if the tyre pressures are out of the window, and one thing you do see in the wet is big variances in terms of that, you just have no confidence. And Hamilton lost, Crofty, nearly 2 seconds to Max Verstappen in just the middle sector of the lap alone. And also, you know, there's just nothing he could do with the way the car was sliding around. Those hairpins as well, especially in the slow speed. In the high-speed corners, when you get the aero load and the downforce pushes the car into the ground, it was manageable. But in the slow-speed corners, he was just sliding on the top surface of the tyre.
Just a reminder that the race starts 3:30 this afternoon in the UK. 2 o'clock, we're on air for our build-up to the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. It's a change in the scheduled time. Readjust your Sunday lunch
So the
plans.
rain does look like it's eased off now, so potentially the best conditions will be now at the start.
And if your roast beef's not in the oven yet, I suggest it should be, otherwise you'll miss lights out. Bernie Collins.
Yeah, I was just going to come in on the radar there. The rain has stopped on the radar. Ted will probably give us an update from the pit lane in a minute. I think, different to what was said there on the video, this session is going to dry throughout. I can see this entire Q2 session, no rain physically falling on the track. So it's going to be a big shift for drivers when to put on that inter. And it's going to be, like we've seen in that last session, last lap, last person across the line, I think will have the best conditions this session.
In which case, down to the pit lane then. Wincy Kravitz, what's the weather looking like?
Wincy Kravitz. It's more like Lucy Weather. She's the Sky, Lucy Gurusamy, Sky Weather presenter, much more on brand. Right, Ollie Behrman is just walking past me, waving to the crowd. He was actually reassured. He was really upset with his performance and was reassured that, look, both Nico Hülkenberg and Lewis Hamilton also out in that first session, so don't worry about it, Ollie Behrman. We'll see what he does in the Grand Prix later. Yes, Crofty, as for the weather, agree completely with Bernie. It hasn't rained now for about 7 or 8 minutes, so it is just going to get quicker and quicker. And because of that, they're all going out on the wets first of all, except for Carlos Sainz. I'm just waiting to see. No, we have a McLaren. Oscar Piastri has gone straight to the intermediates, guys. So let's see how Oscar does.
Yeah, I think that Williams radio message was a bit confusing. I wonder if the engineer corrected himself later, because he said to Alex Albon that the rain is easing off, but the conditions will be best at the start. I think it's actually the other way around, isn't it? Because it's going to get drier and drier. So I think there was a little confusion there in that radio message. But here we go. The Carlos Sainz Ferrari on the full wets, actually, and heading out there. So not the intermediate tyres. It is only Oscar Piastri, I think, who's gone for the intermediates. At least that's the information we have in the commentary box. Sainz having a bit of a wobble there as he comes through the Curva de Sol, dropping downhill. Other cars waiting a minute to come out onto the circuit. That's Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. So Sainz will set the early benchmark.
Yeah, 22.7 for Carlos Sainz. That shows me that it's, while still wet, is getting drier out there, because we weren't seeing those sort of times in the first part of qualifying. Where we lost Zhou Guanyu for the 9th consecutive time. He's been the slowest driver. So 8th consecutive race weekend, he's been the slowest driver. Hülkenberg, we gave him the big build-up. Sadly, his times didn't delight us. He's out. Colapinto's out. Behrman's out. Lewis Hamilton is out, leaving 15 here. And traffic will be less of an issue, but you've still got to find yourself a nice clear gap and stay out of the spray of the car in front and stay on the track as well. And Carlos Sainz working so hard at the steering wheel there through the slower corners.
Yeah, and the slower corners are where you've got less aerodynamic support, and that's where it's tricky. But also, it's the first lap on the tyres, and the temperature will build and build. So his middle sector, Crofty, a 47.5, just as a comparison. Max Verstappen was a 46.8 in Q1, as Sainz does a 29.4, which is still slower than Verstappen's 28.5 from Q1.
Yep, he does improve, though, from his fastest time, Carlos Sainz's fastest time in that Q1 session. Here comes Charles Leclerc, a little bit quicker, 1:29.3, couple of tenths quicker. Sorry, half a second quicker than he managed in Q1.
Right, this is an important lap to watch here. Oscar Piastri is staying out on the intermediate tyres. He's decided not to box, and this is going to be a reference for everybody else. So the first sector, he's come through there. I'm just watching the car rather than the lap time at this stage, because he'll build confidence, right? This is his real exploratory lap rather than an all-out push. But at the moment, I'd say this looks more sensible than when Bottas put the intermediates on in Q1. I think this will come to Oscar as the temperature and confidence build in the tyre.
Valtteri Bottas, second fastest. Fernando Alonso quickest now for Aston Martin. Track's drying out all the time here. Lance Stroll currently third fastest. Alex Albon, his first lap on the wet tyres, goes 8th fastest as Sergio Perez puts about half a second between himself and Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, he's done a 28.1, which Bernie was telling us earlier is about the crossover to the intermediate. So Piastri, middle sector, about a second down. That's fine because it's his first lap. And as I say, he's still finding his feet and finding the grip. And if I was everybody else, I'd be thinking about coming in now to put the intermediates on. And because the drivers need time. The drivers need time to understand where the grip is on the intermediates.
Well, there goes Piastri, third fastest, so still behind Perez, still behind Alonso, but third quickest overall. What's the chatter on the team radio, Bernie Collins, as Max Verstappen about to go fastest overall?
Yeah, like we're watching here, they're all watching Piastri times. As Corinne said, it will come to him. The track will come to him. I think for the others, it's got a banker lap on the full wet, then get into the pit lane, get that pit stop done onto the inter, and get a few laps to build up that inter before, like we said, final lap shootout should be.
Lando Norris has been told box for inters, and he hasn't got that banker lap in. He's only 10th fastest so far, but now is still the right time for him to come in.
100%. Piastri's gone faster than anyone now in the first sector, a big chunk. As I said, the second lap is where he'll really get the proper reference, or we'll get a proper reference, because when you go on a fresh set of tyres, imagine you're driving on a country road on a dry day, and then you've had a bunch of rain come down. You don't know where the puddles are. You don't know where it might spit you off into the hedge on a B road. It's kind of that. Whereas if you drop the kids at school and on the way back, you know where the puddles are. So it's, you know, this is the lap that he's doing now. Is he knows what the car's going to be like, and look at him. He's finding more and more time quicker than anything we've seen so far in the session.
Man who took pole, of course, for the sprint qualifying session in the dry on Friday. Oscar Piastri in the wet, first onto the intermediates. In this Q2 session, goes quickest by just over 6/10 from Max Verstappen. So there's quite a few piling into the pits now. I see Esteban Ocon, Lando Norris switching onto the intermediate tyres. There's a Red Bull down there as well. Sergio Perez.
Yeah, Bernie, I'd like to come to you on this about timing, because I feel like this is going to be a session where you want to be the last car on track for the last lap. How early are the strategists and the engineers calculating that timing? Are they already looking at it now?
You're already looking at it now for sure, Corinne. You're thinking,
George Russell's had a spin. You can see him there, out of Pico de Pato, where Nico Hülkenberg pulled off in sprint qualifying yesterday. Kept the engine running, kept going. Bernie Collins, back to you.
Yeah, you're thinking about it now. You're sort of trying to plan a few laps ahead. How many cool laps do you think you need to do? Will you need a back-off lap for energy, for charge, for all these things just before that final flying lap? It is very important that everything is aligned for that perfect lap at the end. The tyre temperatures, the brake temperatures, the engine modes. So the communication on the pit wall now will be the most frantic it is all weekend.
You're still getting the grip on the intermediate tyres, but you need your car to help you. And I don't think George Russell has got a Mercedes that's necessarily helping him currently out there. Yuki Tsunoda on the inters too, as Piastri has put in 2 purple sectors to cross the line and go even faster.
Wow.
1:25.1 for Oscar Piastri.
Yeah, he's really built the confidence now, hasn't he? He's finding chunks of time. But one thing to keep in mind, Crofty, is, we've seen in dry qualifying sessions, right? They can't ever do 2 laps in a row because A, the tyres overheat, B, they run out of battery in terms of the energy hybrid system. In the wet, you don't use as much energy, so you can do multiple laps in a row. And also, actually, doing multiple laps allows you to keep temperature in the tyres and sometimes build the confidence for the driver as well. So, as Bernie is saying, there's a balancing act of keeping the tyres cool enough and not overheating, but also having the driver rhythm and the driver confidence to follow the track conditions.
Right, on board with George Russell we go. Through Pico de Pato, this is exactly where he spun on the previous lap. Much better this time around.
Yeah, and then just see, nobody's really exploring the wet lines. So, one thing you have to do, look at the train tracks. You have to follow with the driest part of the circuit. And they're not experimenting as much with wet conditions
Carlos
as I thought.
Sainz has gone off the track at turn 2, out of the center S's. Carlos Sainz has come to a standstill by the side of the track as Russell goes second fastest. Now we'll see the double wave yellows because Carlos Sainz's Ferrari is still there, and that's why, because he's gone into the barriers, and that's Carlos Sainz out of this session on the fringes of Q3, and we've got our second red flag, and it's for the man who won 7 days ago in Mexico. Oh dear.
That's a big whack. It's gone in an unusual place because we don't often, that's the barrier between the center S and the pit lane, effectively, the pit lane exit. We don't often see cars off there, so we'll get a replay in a moment as Professor chewing his nails because he knows his mechanics are going to be well up against it, getting that car ready. Right, here we go, climbing uphill towards the center S, breaking the middle of the road, looking for a bit of grip, then using a slightly wider line there. Listening. Just was so slow as he tried to pick the power up.
Yeah.
And
He's just gone on the throttle, and there it
Oh
went.
my gosh, sorry guys.
Yeah, it was going at hardly any throttle, but it just shows how still, as much as we're saying the conditions have improved and Piastri's down in the 25s, it still shows how tricky and treacherous it can be.
5 minutes, 51 seconds to go. Clock stops once again. Might be a bit of a lengthier time to recover the car than it took to recover Franco Colapinto's Williams. That has gone in quite heavy, and that's Karun Chandok. We talked about the rebuild at Williams. That is a bigger rebuild at Ferrari.
Yeah, they would have sub-assembled the whole rear end, and hopefully they could just bolt that back on. But it is a big job. It's a massive job to get that car ready in time. Liam Lawson we're looking at here, 5th at the moment. So what a great job he's doing so far. You have to say quicker than Tsunoda by some margin yesterday, Coffey, day before yesterday in the drive.
It certainly is. Also a nod to Lance Stroll, who just got a lap in as well before the red flag. Remember Lance Stroll's pole in Formula One?
Turkey.
But in Turkey, conditions very murky in Turkey that day. Bernie Collins, I believe you might have been on the pit wall.
I definitely was on the pit wall, but I think I've managed to erase that from my mind.
Like that one that he just said.
Something about Lance Stroll you didn't like, getting pole in?
No, I just said my memory's terrible. What I was going to say, Crofty, is this red flag is very, very worrying for Norris. The reason being that window of opportunity that we talked about is closing. So every minute that ticks by in this red flag, more rain is approaching.
Really?
So there is a chance, depending on the length of this red flag, and I've not seen the Ferrari car move from the track yet, we could start the session with more rain coming down. So we've just missed the best of it. So can Norris improve if it's beginning to rain again?
Give us an estimation. What is radar saying to you?
Radar, I think, if we lose 5 minutes with this red flag, which I think is likely, it'll be raining at the start of the session.
Well, I mean, they're still trying to dig the car out of the barrier and rip that rear wing off it. So I think there's a massive there. We could see it coming from the sort of northwest of the circuit. All week, Crofty, we've been saying that we suspected Verstappen will have a penalty.
Yep.
And it's a massive weekend for Norris to try and capitalize. He did it yesterday, but this is not looking good at the moment.
Thing is, his teammate, Oscar Piastri, went onto the intermediate straight away and has had the benefits of making the right call to be on the right tyre at the right time. Now, Why didn't Lando Norris do exactly the same thing?
And that's what I would want to really know. And I don't know, Ted, if you can go and poke Tom Stallard and Will Joseph and try and find out, you know, who made that call? Did Oscar say, I want the intermediates, or was it a pit wall? Because if it was a pit wall, I would be upset if I was Lando Norris. But if it was Oscar making the call, then you go, you know what? That's a bold decision and fair play.
But Lando was already out in the pit lane waiting, Karun. Oscar was sitting in the garage, looking at the conditions.
But they didn't need to send Lando across.
I know, but you know, they joined the queue with everybody else on the full wet, so they thought that was the best thing to do. Obviously, that's what they do. And Oscar, I mean, I would say rather than disturb Tom Stallard and Will Joseph, I'd pat Tom Stallard on the back and say good call on keeping Oscar in the garage, because we remember we'd said, didn't we, that the rain had stopped and hadn't rained for quite a while at the beginning of this session. It was dry, and Oscar thought, and Tom Stallard, his engineer, let's just hold off, let's see what it's going to do. Okay, let's go Inter. But anyway, listen, we've got some more to go. They're going to put new
resumption, Ted. We've got a resumption in 3 minutes time.
Lando's going again now. Lando just wants to be out there, at the end of the pit lane early. So it's new intermediates I'm seeing now, as these guys, the bravery, the skill on show here at Interlagos, just mind-boggling. But new intermediates to help them on their way.
And a red flag then for Carlos Sainz, who we've just seen walking back to the paddock, who's crashed in qualifying for the second time in the last 4 races, leaving his teammate Charles Leclerc on the brink. Carlos Sainz is also on the brink, and Lando Norris is in the relegation zone, along with Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon, Yuki Tsunoda and Esteban Ocon, who's not actually set a time yet.
I was a little bit surprised to see Alex Albon using so many tear-off strips on his visor when we had that helmet. Because I often found you get water in between those tear-off strips. They're just bits of plastic, but you get water sometimes that's, you know, goes in between. You get the condensation, and that can actually hamper your vision.
We should have stayed in the garage. We are more or less the last car.
Just going to improve through the session here.
But staying in the garage means you can keep the tyres in the blanket.
Yep.
And if you are the last car, what's the point of being out there currently? You want the tyres in the blankets keeping their temperature.
Yeah, exactly, because unlike the wet tyres that don't go in the blankets, the intermediate tyres are brought up to 60 degrees Celsius. So, yeah, Perez is right, I think, to sound annoyed. If you're Norris with clean visibility,
fair enough.
Absolutely fair enough. Yeah, I get it. And you can generate the temperature at your own pace. But I think Perez was annoyed on Friday as well, wasn't he? Because he missed the last lap, and I think that cost him.
So, Oscar, there's now light drops in pit lane. We think the rain may pick up in 4 minutes or so.
So, Bernie Collins, is this Red Bull and McLaren not exactly a team that would see eye to eye on a lot of things, as you could understand, in the Championship Challenge, having a completely different reading of the weather radar here?
What I've learned over the years, Crofty, is everybody in the team has a different read of the radar, because some of it is so subjective, and any of the images that we've seen on screen, just north of the track, there is a big blank spot in the radar. So actually where the rain is coming from is really, really difficult to see. So predicting a few minutes time is okay, but predicting much further than that is very, very difficult. So you will always get different opinions on the radar, Crofty.
I picked up the word cambio from Carlos Sainz, which in Italian means gearbox. So I think he's coming back and telling his mechanics I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, which could be a penalty for Carlos Sainz, and a 5-place penalty, or yes, be a 5. Would it be a penalty? Can he check? Bernie Collins, I'll ask you. They're in part firme. Can they change the gearbox to another one in the pool? Or do you get a penalty if you've taken a new one that's out of the pool?
Yes, they should be fit to do it for one within the pool. They'll just ask the FIA for that. If they have to go to one outside of their allocation, so one more than required for the whole year, that would be a penalty. It's likely that they have an old one ready to go. So I suspect no penalty, but let's see. It's a lot of work for the guys.
Not for the first time in my life. I'm so glad you're with us here in the commentary box. Right, green light then, and away goes Lando Norris. And once again, Karun Chandok, in terms of his championship bid and challenge this season, this is a very crucial 5 minutes coming up.
It really, really is going to be super important. He's basically going to get 3 time laps, as Leclerc and Ferrari have chosen the opposite plan and decided to wait and keep the temperature in the blankets there and just let everybody go out for, by the time he leaves pit exit, it'll be over a minute. So he's gone for space. Yeah, big 3 laps coming up here for Lando, isn't it?
And for Charles Leclerc, for whom Ferrari are now second in the Constructors' Championship. They've already got Carlos Sainz out of qualifying. He's going to have to start scoring some points. Max Verstappen's taking a grid penalty. Sergio Perez has never failed to reach Q3 in Sao Paulo when he's been with Red Bull. He's doing very well so far, but don't forget he's been out in Q2 or failed to reach Q3, I should say, 7 times overall this season.
Just a quick line on Perez before we get into this Norris lap. Actually, you know what? Let's get in the Norris lap because I'll come back to Perez later. Look at the top right. That's his delta time there. So he already knows he's just about 2/10 up on his previous best. But look, it's dropping down. So that gives him an indication as we get towards Tecido de Largo there. So get the nose in. He's a couple lengths up on Sainz's time, but Sainz's time is a long way off Piastri, so that's irrelevant. But look at his delta. He's picking up time all the way. So when I say delta, that's a reference to his previous best. So Lando now needs a good middle sector. He's got plenty of space ahead of him, Crofty. Charles Leclerc is 4 corners ahead of him. So he could just get clean visibility, really focus on getting a lap that puts him clear. But everyone's going to be improving now.
Well, they are. Yuki Tsunoda was half a second clear, quicker than Lando Norris through the first sector alone. Fernando Alonso was a couple of tenths up. Valtteri Bottas was a 10th or 2 up as well. So Norris going well, and look, 2.4 seconds is the margin that he's improving here, but that's, you know, reference to himself and the time he needs to get out of that bottom 5, and he's going to have to keep pushing here. Then he'll have probably a cool down lap, then another push lap to try and seal his place in the top 10 for qualifying. Goes 3rd fastest, so he's 1.2 seconds off the pace of his teammate. Piastri really flying before that red flag, but that's a much improved time for Lando Norris. Yuki Tsunoda, who was quicker than Norris in the first sector, goes 4th fastest. Charles Leclerc is down already in his Ferrari. Alex Albon goes 5th fastest.
The Williams looks very stiff. Albon's head is really bobbing around in the cockpit, much more than anyone else on this bumpy track surface that we have here. Leclerc, not a good first sector. Don't know if he made a mistake somewhere. Fernando Alonso's gone fastest of anybody in the middle sector and goes fastest of anyone across the lap as well.
Fernando Alonso was 4th on the grid for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix last year, and his teammate Lance Stroll was 3rd. Well, they're having a much better day today in the rain, Aston Martin, than they've had recently in the dry, and Alonso quickest by a 1/10 and a half. But Alex Albon now quickest overall through the first sector. The track is drying out, and these times are going to change around a bit as Lance Stroll, 5th fastest, Esteban Ocon up into the top 3, Lando Norris down into 6th place, and George Russell out there at the moment, finding himself 4th fastest overall.
The team's going to be feverishly working out. He's got a yellow flag in sector 1. Lance Stroll's gone off at Curva de Sol.
And I wonder if this is another car into the barriers. We've got double wave yellows for Lance Stroll down at turn 3. Lando Norris goes fastest overall, now encounters the yellow flags. Max Verstappen is in the bottom 5, and we have got a yellow flag being waved. Verstappen's down on this lap as well, and Lance Stroll is still there at turn 3. Alex Albon goes 4th fastest. I think race control letting these laps unfold before putting a red flag out.
Both Red Bulls, Crofty, both Red Bulls in the relegation zone here.
So I wonder, was the yellow flag there when Max Verstappen started his lap time? Did he have to lift off for Sergio Perez the same? This is now unraveling for Red Bull here today. Now we've got a red flag. And now Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez are out of qualifying, and that's the reason why. Lance Stroll going off at the Curva de Sol. I think race control gave it as long as they could for people to complete their laps so that they weren't caught out by that, but in the end the race director Nils Vittich had to throw that red flag because this Aston Martin was in a dangerous position, and Q2 will not be resumed, and Verstappen will start 17th on the grid for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix.
Wow, and Norris has done it. He's got himself into the top 10. Here we go. Okay, let's look at Stroll's incident before we talk about the implications here. Turns right, left, listen in. Same as Colapinto. Yeah. Exactly the same as Colapinto there, but he went in forwards into the barrier. So it was the rear right tyre again on that bit of water that caught him out. And wow, so I was just saying, for Norris, a big weekend where he needs to capitalise on Verstappen's penalty. So far, so good. He's got himself out of the relegation zone. Red Bull are the ones who have tripped up there.
Max Verstappen, the only driver on the grid still to have appeared in Q3 at every race this year. Has that run come to an end? And there was nothing he could do about it. The red flag was thrown whilst he was on his final lap. He wasn't really improving on that final lap, it has to be said, but he still had a chance. But he's out. Bernie Collins.
Yeah, so just to fill people in a little bit there, what happened with Red Bull, Crofty. A lot of people went out lap one, but we'd seen from Piastri's lap that the Inter got stronger and stronger through the run. Piastri done 3 in a row on that first Inter that he ran. So Red Bull actually went out and did a warm-up lap first on the Inter, then planning to push on that second lap, which, you know, as you say, Verstappen wasn't necessarily up at the time anyway, and then it was red flag. So a bit unfortunate in a way how the run plan went out. I've just heard Checo pretty strong on the radio that he thought queuing in the pit lane was the wrong thing, and then that the run plan was the wrong thing. Easy in hindsight now.
Just have a little look at Max Verstappen.
Waving his hand in frustration.
I think that's the moment where he was told there's a red flag.
He was 2 cars, Crofty, behind Stroll. So he would have seen, I think, the end of the Stroll crash.
Come on, guys.
Yeah.
We gotta do a better program.
Jos Verstappen as well.
We just went there at the end.
And no,
what was the point to go there at
so
the
yeah,
end?
he would have seen Stroll in the barrier. There was supposed to be a yellow, which is why we saw his first sector time.
And he would have lifted off.
Yeah, his first sector time being the second and a half down.
No. We should have waited. If everyone is waiting already at the end of the pit lane, why we go?
There was going to be a busy pit lane of people repairing cars. Stroll is in, by the way. Stroll is into the top 10.
I know. We've seen this before, not necessarily with Lance Stroll, but we've seen drivers crash. Valtteri Bottas did it famously in Australia one year, had a big crash, didn't he? And was still through at Q3, but couldn't take part.
Here's the story.
Go on.
Both Red Bulls out, both RBs in to the top 10.
Yeah, Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson, who was 4th fastest.
There's a little bit of internal ego boost in the Red Bull camp, isn't it, for the RB team, I'm sure. So Will Joseph, the man who we hear speaking to Lando Norris, and a bit of reprieve for them. I was a little bit nervous, I have to say, when we went to that green flag, and he just got himself in those last 5 minutes through.
So Pierre Gasly, 15th, Carlos Sainz, 14th. Sergio Perez qualifies 13th, where he qualified for the sprints, but he will move up because his teammate Max Verstappen, 12th fastest only, and he has a 5-place grid penalty to come. Valtteri Bottas just missed out by about 1/100th of a second, and Lando Norris was quickest. What a Q2.
Yeah, sorry to tell you, but P11.
Oh, well, good job anyway, good timings.
Unfortunately, with where we are, the whole...
That's not an excuse, mate. No. We should have waited. If everyone is waiting already at the end of the pit lane, why we go?
Welcome back to Interlagos.
What's the time left on the clock?
45 seconds.
Come on, guys. We gotta do a better program.
Fortunately, with where we are at the pit lane, the whole...
That's not an excuse, mate. No. We should have waited. If everyone is waiting already at the end of the pit lane, why we go?
I agree with Checo. He's absolutely right, because we saw Ferrari waited a minute with Charles Leclerc. He went out and did a 126.097 and got himself into P6 and into Q3. So I 100% agree with Perez there.
Sergio Perez then out of Q2. Max Verstappen out of Q2. It's qualifying and the race here on Sunday at Interlagos, and it's a different time to the scheduled start of the Grand Prix that you might have been expecting. So we'll be on air from 2 o'clock in the UK with our build-up to the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. It is lights out at 3:30. So just to remind you, you wouldn't want to miss the start of this race. If it's going to be anything like this qualifying session, we are in for an absolute beauty this afternoon.
It's going to be a brilliant race. You're going to have Verstappen coming through the pack. Let's rewind to 2016 and his extraordinary wet drive, which I think really announced him to the world as a future world champion, a future great. Yeah, we're going to have him coming through the pack. We're going to have Norris trying to get as many points of a buffer over Max and eat into the World Championship lead, and Hamilton coming through from will be 15th, I guess, once Verstappen's penalties applied. They'll be together on the grid, one behind the other. 15th, 17th, Hamilton, Verstappen. Wow.
Start's going to be delayed, unsurprisingly, while they just have a look at the barriers and pick up a few more bits of front wing from that Aston Martin. And what have we got? Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri for McLaren, who've got 2 front row lockouts in the last 8 races. They haven't achieved that in Brazil since 2012, the days of Lewis Hamilton and Jenson Button. We've got a Fernando Alonso, who's seeking a first pole since Germany 2012, which, by the way, is 4,487 days ago. Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda, the 2 RBs, both in this. Alex Albon for Williams, Charles Leclerc for Ferrari, Esteban Ocon for Alpine, and George Russell for Mercedes. We have quite a mix of constructors out there. Is it only McLaren and RB, the only 2 teams that have got both cars through, and they're already coming out of the garages, Ted Kravitz?
Which is a really good idea, because some spots of rain, Crofty, have just started to fall. The puddles that are already in the pit lane have a few plinky-plonky spots of rain on them. And Esteban Ocon, well done to the Alpine team, I've got to say. They were quick, smart there. He's either at the front or very near the front. Can you see a wide shot of the front of the queue down at the end of the pit lane? The guys who are going to have the best,
at the moment,
the best
and I'm
visibility.
looking at our commentary box window, Ted. No, and Ocon, I think he is at the front.
Ocon was really quick down there. So with the frustration at Alpine that Pierre Gasly felt not being able to get through, at least they've been quick on their heels to get out for Q3 with Esteban Ocon. Also frustrated, Valtteri Bottas felt that he could have been in the top 10. Good recovery from Yuki Tsunoda. Shame for Lance Stroll, he's not able to be in it. Of course, great lap for Esteban Ocon and Alex Albon and Liam Lawson to be in this session as well. But Crofty, 40 seconds to show the red flag. By the time that Stroll went off and the red flag coming out, 40 seconds. Now, we've already had this delay questioned by people, drivers, throughout. I'm sure Red Bull won't be particularly impressed about it, but I can't believe that the race director is waiting to let drivers finish their laps. He's surely got to be looking at the CCTV pictures and talking to marshals in terms of deciding when to put out the red flag.
Yeah, but he would have been, Ted, and Lance Stroll was still trying to get the car kind of moving and out of the way again. And I think, do you know what? If the driver is okay, and he clearly was, and the double waved yellows are down there, so slow down and prepare to stop, and it's qualifying. Give people a chance to finish their laps if you possibly can, because otherwise, you know, they're going to be compromised and it's not going to be their fault. We'll be moaning about that.
If it keeps raining like this, we should just stay out.
Copy.
Can I come back in?
Yeah, I agree with Crofty, because I think it was really unlucky for Max that it was Ocon and then him, the 2 cars behind Stroll. but everyone ahead of Stroll on the track would have had the opportunity to finish their lap without a yellow flag in a safe manner. So why not let them finish their laps? Because that's the fair thing to do, is to give everyone at least that opportunity.
So, Lando, we think the best conditions should be within these first 5 minutes. We think there's more rain behind that.
So, these first few laps could be important, and before we get going, and as we get going, as the green light is on right now, and before it starts to get really serious, let's hear from Max Verstappen out of qualifying.
Max, I can see you're frustrated. Just talk me through what the frustration is right now.
It's just the car hits the wall. It needs to be straight red. I don't understand why it needs to take 30, 40 seconds for a red flag to come out. It's just...
It looked as though they were trying to let the laps finish. Some people finished the laps, but at that point they realised the car was in a dangerous position.
I don't, you know, honestly, I let it go. It's so stupid anyway to talk about. It's ridiculous.
All right, thank you, Max. Thank you.
Well, he clearly isn't happy that the red flag came out at all. But you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And I think the race director did his utmost best on this particular occasion. Obviously, not enough for Max to finish his lap, but he was already down, as we were saying, through that first few sectors, or first FIA sector, because the double-waved yellows were being thrown because of Lance Stroll going off.
Yeah, and I feel his frustration. I absolutely feel his frustration. But he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that's just bad luck, that he was behind somebody who crashed a few meters ahead of him. He's had a tough run, he feels, in recent times with the stewards, and it's just building up and building up and building up. And I get it, but from his perspective, why he would think that way, but I still think it was the right thing to do.
Do you know this is the first time that Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen have both failed to reach Q3 when they've taken part in a Grand Prix weekend simultaneously, when they've been together in a qualifying session?
Wow,
it's the first time we've ever had Hamilton or Verstappen not in Q3 when they've both been qualifying.
Amazing. Also, your run of German poles on a Sunday is gone.
Yeah, we've forgotten about that one.
I can see I'll be texting Ant now and rejoicing together.
I'm going Vive la France or Vive la half Belgian. Who knows what's going to happen with this one, because in these conditions, anyone could take pole. The key here, Karun Chandok, right tyre, right time.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, there's some really impressive driving so far. I think Alex Albon's been brilliant all through the session. I think Liam Lawson has been brilliant throughout the session. So, yeah, we're going to see, whatever happens, we're seeing a jumbled up top 10. Totally not what we would expect to see in the dry. And it's going to set us up for a great Grand Prix.
Bernie Collins, refresh my memory. Is the radar saying good now, bad later? Or is it saying good now, good later? Where's the rain coming from?
The radar doesn't work in good and bad, Crofty, but I'll try and interpret for you. So there's more rain coming. I think that it's going to be at the best at the beginning of this session. I agree with what McLaren was told there. It'll take a lap or so to get the inter in. Then you'll set, I think, what will be the quickest lap time. And towards the end of the session, it'll start to get wetter again. So it's probably around lap 2 or 3 at your best track conditions.
So here's the first push lap then for Oscar Piastri, and he goes fastest overall, 1:26.0 for the man. And by the way, 2 poles in the sprint qualifying, never been on pole for a Grand Prix so far. Lando Norris next across the line, and he goes 0.4 of a second faster into provisional pole ahead of his teammates. Alex Albon putting a 1:38.3, went off the track, it's been deleted, that won't count, as Liam Lawson slots in behind Esteban Ocon to go 4th fastest of the times we've had so far, and this is a real struggle for Russell.
He's got no grip, absolutely no grip. I mean, it's been a miserable weekend for Mercedes in terms of competing with their 3 teams around them, as Yuki Tsunoda's gone 2nd fastest, just 4/10 up, but Piastri, this is now the lap, Crofty, we saw. The first lap wasn't necessarily the one where the times were coming. The temperature needed to build, the confidence needed to build. This is the lap that really matters, and Piastri's gone faster than anyone in Sector 1. Norris has matched him on a 21.4. Tsunoda only a 10th behind them in Sector 1. The grip is coming, the confidence is coming. Not for George Russell, though. He's gone 2nd fastest, but I still think that car doesn't look as hooked up as most of the others.
It looked a bit dancing on ice, didn't it? But he's danced his way to third fastest so far as Esteban Ocon on that second lap goes fastest by half a second from Lando Norris. Here comes Oscar Piastri then to complete another lap on the intermediates, and he's back on provisional pole. And we look to his teammate Lando Norris as Alex Albon goes fastest now by 3/100ths of a second. Norris puts half a second between himself and Alex Albon. That half a second could be absolutely crucial. We've got yellow flags being waved, a double yellow flag, and it's for Fernando Alonso at Magulio, and it's a red flag as we watch Alex Albon and his excursion off the track. It's another Aston Martin into the barriers. It's Fernando Alonso this time around. And what a dramatic qualifying session this is becoming.
Wow. And Magulio, that's a quick corner, dropping downhill. Even in these conditions, you're accelerating out of that hairpin. And Pico de Pato before that, as we see Mike Crack on the wall, as we know that Fernando Alonso is okay and out of the car, which is the most important. But, God, brunch has been cancelled at Aston Martin as they have to put these cars back together for the Grand Prix. There's barrier damage there, actually. A reasonable amount of barrier damage.
To the advertising hoarding, yes. So both sides of the garage have got some extensive work to be done.
Think of Tom Stallard's message. The rain could be coming. And Bernie, I'll just come to you on this. So that car, they haven't yet got the crane out. I'm going to estimate, based on what we saw at Sainz, this is at least 4 or 5 minutes of waiting around. What do you think in terms of the weather?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, it's very light rain now. I think maybe Ted will update us. And then I think it's going to become a little bit heavier after that. It's a bit unclear to see on the radar, but we may have seen the best laps in this session because we've got less cars running now. We've actually going to have 8 running in this session.
Yep.
So the track will dry at a much, much slower rate than we've seen in Q1. And if we have that very, very light rain, it will be a struggle to get that to work. So big call for the teams now, actually. I think this one's probably one of the hardest calls in terms of is it inter or wet, depending on how much rain we get when we get going.
So when we do get going, if the rain, as expected then, has come down slightly heavier, well, we'll talk about that in a moment. Let's see what happened to Fernando Alonso then. Out of Pico de Pato, now Magulio, the dive, you drop downhill really sharply, and then the car just gets away from him. Oh, and it's gone in.
You okay, mate?
It's gone in at a very bad angle.
Sorry.
Yeah, so he's in 4th gear there when he ended up hitting the barrier. It just snapped on him instantly. I mean, these cars got 1,000 horsepower and a huge amount of torque that you're trying to manage. And if you just don't quite have the grip, it went very quickly. Well,
the thing is, he's just skating literally over the wet asphalt runoff. And I say that went in at a bad angle. That really went in at a bad angle if you're a gearbox, if you're an engine. You know, there's suspension parts there, Bernie Collins.
Wrong one.
Sorry.
I wish I had the money, though.
Yeah, slight difference in age, but, you know, you're our experienced head in the commentary box. Bernie Collins, you're looking at that, you're thinking, that's a gearbox change straight away.
Yeah, every time I see that, it just looks worse and worse. And I really feel, you know, think of the mechanics in the pit lane up and down. They've had a late night last night. They're at the end of a triple header. You've just seen both cars go out in the session. You've got a massively quick turnaround before we get to the race, which isn't that far away. So they'll be looking at that. They'll be literally piling the bits out on the floor of the garage now. It's both front corners, rear gearbox, it looks like, at least a rear corner, if not even that. Rear wing, it's every time I see it, my head shakes a little bit more, and I do feel for the garage.
I'm just thinking, and I'm trying to picture the scene in the Aston Martin garage. For viewers around the world, you won't probably know about a man called Chris Dodds, who is one of the great characters in Formula One, but Bernie, you'll know Doddsy very well. And he has recently gone back to being a factory-based employee. Well, he's out here in Sao Paulo for this weekend, merely observing. Doddsy, who was chief mechanic at Aston Martin,
probably we would call him Chief Trucker.
Chief Trucker, yeah. He will now be trying to assemble as many parts as possible, grinning and scowling at the same time and realising that he should really have stayed at home on this Sunday morning.
Is your excuse that you're at the end of a triple header when you looked at Bernie, confused with Bernie?
Yeah, no, my excuse is it's 8:45 in the morning, and breakfast TV was never my strong point.
Well, actually, speaking of Doddsy, when I spoke to him earlier this weekend, he was out observing, trying to learn a little bit about the freight that other teams use, etc. I think he's on a non-working pass, as we call it, so he's here as a visitor.
Oh,
so he won't be pushing anything anywhere, hopefully.
Right, okay.
He'll just be observing from the sidelines and watching everyone else do it.
You've literally just gobbed them in. Yeah. If I was the other teams, I'd be complaining about a non-working pass person now doing some work.
He'll be sitting in the background having a cup of coffee thinking he's glad that he's not
I did
involved.
not realise he was on a non-working pass.
I'm pretty sure that's what he told me.
You're on a roll this morning, Croft.
do you know, all hands to the deck, though, to be fair. At Ferrari and at Aston Martin and at Williams, and by the way, that's extensive, isn't it? And at Williams, Franco Colapinto out in Q1. Alex Albon on course at the moment for his highest starts in Formula One and his first ever front row in Formula One, alongside Lando Norris, who can probably scarcely believe the way that this grid is shaping up for him and his championship challenge. Ted Kravitz, down to you.
Yeah, I can't speak for your truckie there, but I can speak for the action already going on in the Aston Martin garage. Some mechanics running around, seeing where bits are located. Everything's being coordinated by Andy Stevenson on the pit wall and Tom McCulloch and all the engineers. And yeah, they will get on with it as soon as they can get the cars back. Did you want to come in, Crofty?
No, not at all.
So yeah, so it's of course Colapinto, Sainz, Stroll and Alonso that will be keeping tabs on before the Sao Paulo Grand Prix to see how many drivers we have. Red flag was much quicker that time, wasn't it? I think we were 19 seconds rather than 40, so you know, small gains. And we've got a lot of drivers asking what happens next. Liam Lawson saying what's going to happen next. So, well, it will restart and you'll go out again. Alex Albon currently on the front row of the grid saying that he thinks he can go faster if they can get a bit more bite out of the front of the Williams. And George Russell saying definitely new inters, but we need to lower the pressures. Don't know if they'll be able to do that, but we will see. So I don't know, Bernie, whether you're keeping an eye on how many sets of inters they've got through at the moment, but it's getting pretty thin. I've counted 3 for more or less all of them so far. And they're going to have to keep one new set for the end of Q3, or maybe even the race itself.
Yeah, Ted, just to pick up on that, I think you're right, I've got 3 in use for Russell, 3 new inters, so they have 5 available, so they'll have 1, I think, to put on for this last 7 minutes of the session, and see how that goes. I can't imagine that in 7 minutes they're going to get 2 runs done, so that'll be it.
There's a man there with a heavy industrial nail gun just to make sure that everything that needs putting back in place is going to be properly attached. We have got 4.5 minutes to go now to the start of the resumption. And even with that 4.5 minutes, they're all piling out because being at the front of the queue is exactly where you need to be. It is like the post office on a Tuesday morning, Karun Chandok, where I just go down to get a book of stamps and they're already queuing outside there way before I turn up.
Yeah, because we saw from the Red Bulls, didn't we? You know, if you get a late red flag or a yellow, you could get caught out, and conditions are still very tricky. It's catching our drivers as good as Fernando Alonso, so you just don't want to get caught out. But Ferrari, you know, they're clearly looking at the policy, and this is where position in the pit lane. You know, we heard Hubert talking to Checo Perez about it. Position in the pit lane matters.
Yeah.
You know, if you're Mercedes, they're down that end with Ferrari and Red Bull. They kind of preempted, I think, when it was going to be called and went straight away. They were ready to go straight away. Ferrari have decided that the opposite policy of, like these guys at RB, we're going to just sit, keep the tires in the blanket, and then let the crowd go out. But there are, as Bernie was saying, there are only going to be 8 cars on track, so it's not a big queue actually at the end of the pit lane now.
Yeah, it's not going to be a big queue, but that 4 minutes when the tyres are out of blankets is substantial, I think, and teams are trying to play off having the clear beginning of the track, having that clear track ahead of you versus the temperature in the tyres. So I think that's a trade-off by whether you think it's going to be lap 1 or dry enough for lap 2. So can you build up the inter-temperature?
If I was if I was in this session, I would do what RB and Leclerc are doing, because I think actually just having a handful of cars in front, clear off some of the standing water that's fallen during the red flag will be handy, and you just take a slight gamble that they're not going to shunt on this on the first couple of laps.
And with only 8 cars in this session, the traffic should be better. You should be able to find a gap within the cars. It's different at the beginning of Q1 when you've got 20 cars. It's important to be first so that you're making your own luck through the lap, if you like.
And I'd much rather have temperature, Crofty. You know, you'd much rather have temperature in the tyres, because you just get confidence from the first out lap if you've got more temperature in the tyres.
No rain expected. I think McLaren are telling Lando Norris on the team radio for the remainder of this session, and he's in that queue behind George Russell, who's never had an official pole here at Interlagos, but did start P1 for the race that he won, of course, here in 2022. Lando Norris currently on provisional pole, sat behind George Russell in the queue. Norris on a run of 4 poles in the last 6 races. Oscar Piastri, who took pole for the sprint qualifying, currently 3rd on the grid. Esteban Ocon, who's never qualified higher than 8th here at Interlagos in his career before, and has a best qualifying of 3rd from Spa in 2018, sits in 4th place. Then comes George Russell in the timing charts, Charles Leclerc, Yuki Tsunoda, Liam Lawson, and the 2 Aston Martins of Alonso and Stroll into the top 10, but they won't be taking any further part after both brought out red flags. A lot to do then for Charles Leclerc to make up time on Lando Norris.
See how the mechanics, they just try and keep the tyres wrapped until the final possible moment. Try and keep every bit of temperature into those tyres, and Ferrari have timed it pretty well. He's still going to join the queue, but only for about 30 odd seconds.
In all honesty, they could have waited another 30 seconds and then brought him out, because he's going to take a little bit longer for the cars to stagger themselves coming out of the pit lane.
But RB are waiting. I could see them actually. They're right opposite our commentary box. I could see them just looking out of the window here. We're going to go green, but I think they're going to wait to get visibility as well.
Yeah. So here we go then, Q3, and we have got plenty of time for it all to change.
Come on then.
Light goes green, and away we go then for the final part of this qualifying.
Who do you reckon? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Well, honestly, I think Lando Norris hooked up a very, very good lap. His biggest threat to me is his teammate Oscar Piastri. But in these conditions, Karun Chandok, you can find grip sometimes where you're not expecting it, and you can lose grip where you are. Where's your money going?
I'm going to say Oscar. I feel like he's, right from the first runs, he's shown a lot of confidence. So, I don't know, this is something tells me Oscar's just got a bit more confidence today.
3 different pole sitters in the last 3 Grand Prix here. I think we're bang on course for a 4th in 4. As we watch then Lando Norris out of the pits and heading towards Ferradura, the horseshoe. You might feel like you want to ride on board with Lando Norris. You can do that. We've got all the onboards and the team radio for you. You need your Sky Sports app and your Sky Sports ID to log in with, or press your interactive button on your remote control should you be watching on Sky Q, Sky Glass, Sky Stream or Now. And now is the time that Charles Leclerc needs to, for Ferrari, make an impression on the front couple of rows. Only 8 cars taking part here. Fair play, Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson doing a mighty fine job for RB and their battle with Haas. They're only 10 points behind them in the championship. It's about $15 million if they can get past them once again. They're still in it, and the 2 Haases are out so far. And here goes George Russell then for his first flying lap, and he almost went flying round at the very first corner.
Yeah, once again, just really struggling with the rear of the car. George was queuing for 5 minutes at the end of the pit lane, so this isn't going to be his real quick lap. It's going to come on the next lap as he builds the temperature back up. 21.9 for Sector 1 is nearly 6 tenths, and he's now off at Desierto de Lagos. This is definitely not going to be his lap.
So he's going to back off then, whilst Lando Norris does a 21.6, 3 tenths up, and that still not as fast as we've seen Norris go.
But he's not going to back off, I think, Crofty, because he needs to get temperature. That's what he's going to keep pushing. Piastri, we think, has had a spin.
At Curva de Sol at turn 3, and he's got going once again. So whilst the rain has eased and no further rain is expected, it's still so tricky out there. Greasy conditions, wet puddles on the track for the drivers to negotiate. Just staying within the white lines is difficult enough, but finding where you can push and improve your lap time is even more treacherous.
Yeah, so this lap is about building temperature, building confidence. So kind of ignore the lap time, although we're getting yellow flags.
Yuki Tsunoda down at Decido de Lago has had a moment. We've got yellow flags being waved there, but that is not going to impact Lando Norris, although he's not going to impact in terms of a time and improvement on this lap. Charles Leclerc has gone through that section already, and he is improving as Tsunoda gets going once more, and Norris finishes a second off his provisional pole time. Charles Leclerc, meanwhile, we right on board with him at exactly the right moment out of Vico de Pato. That is a really tricky section for him there. And Alex Albon at turn 1 is off the track and is stationary in the runoff area, and it's another red flag, and that is why he's stationary. Alex Albon, who, if you remember, had a tangling with Kevin Magnussen at the start here and made it to turn 1, but not with all wheels attached, has had a big moment, and I'm glad he's saying he's okay, but that is a big crash for Alex Albon, who currently occupies row 2, but what a rebuild that's going to be for the Williams team.
He's done 3 corners, and I'm pretty sure gearbox as well. I mean, how many times we heard James Vowles talking about it this year, tight on parts, coming towards the end of the season. He's got 2 broken cars that they've got to try and rebuild in the next 3 hours. Glad to hear he's okay, but it seems like he's lost it under braking, Crofty, because he's even before the corner. He's into the barrier. And remember the start of the race, he was in that barrier.
Yeah, just as I just said with Kevin Magnussen, he had that tangle with him and went into there. Here's Alex Albon saying, I can go even faster. If I can just find a bit more bites in that Williams, or maybe that's ambition to promote him ahead of Lando Norris. Maybe a first ever pole in Formula One. That's what's bit here, but disappointment. You can sense the disappointment in Alex Albon, and I wonder if he actually has hurt himself a little bit, because he's just trying to get his glove off there, and it just looks like that left wrist of his might have taken a bit of a knock.
All right, let's take a look at this. So he's drifting up to the right-hand side of the track. Ooh, he starts to lose it. The rear of the car under braking, it's like he started to lock the rears, but he kept his hands
on the wheel.
Did the brakes fail?
We're checking. Oh, Alex, are you okay?
Yeah.
We're checking on the brakes. So from our side, brakes look okay. You can still hear me.
But he had some form of rear locking. The rear of the car has gone under the bridge there. I don't know if he touched the paint. Maybe he touched the white line on the right-hand side. But certainly, the rear of the car was moving. There was some sort of lateral movement on the rear, which is symptomatic. You know, in the past, I would have said it is on the downshifts. You would often get locking on the downshift. But nowadays, with the way these gearboxes work, they're so seamless. That doesn't tend to happen. So it could be something with just the B-valve system, the electronic brake system, just the blend of how all of that works.
The B-valve, the brake balance.
So, the brake balance, I should say, sorry. So you have two things. You have the brake balance, which is when you first hit the brake pedal, that adjusts the amount of braking pressure front and rear. Then you have brake migration. So as you're coming off the brake, it adjusts the balance between the front and the rear. And that has to work in tandem, Crofty, with the engine settings and the hybrid system for the recovery. So somewhere, something didn't feel right to me there, and the rear of the car just completely caught him off guard.
Saw Dave Redding, the team manager at Williams, in conversation with James Vowles, the team principal, and Dave will be saying, right, okay, we've got the parts here, here, and here, and this is what I think we're going to need to do. And they're probably starting already to think how they're going to piece and rebuild that car back together again.
They've only got one set of certain parts.
Yeah.
Colapinto's car. I don't know, you know, they need to assess the damage on both, really, don't they?
I wouldn't be at all surprised if we see some pit lane starts today.
Oh, yeah.
Given some of these incidents, and at the end of a triple header as well, I'm sure teams are right on the limit when it comes to new parts. That's the Oscar Piastri spin that we told you about and hadn't seen. And well done for him for actually staying on the asphalt itself.
So Tsunoda heading down towards the Cedar de Largo, and let's have a look. Oh, here's another one. Look, under braking.
Yeah.
Did he looked quite close to the edge of the track there, so I wonder if he also touched the white line. He's in the gravel there, Crofty, but he has obviously got back to the pits, so
there's a long runoff area there, and he needed plenty of it.
But the right-hand tyres, look, they drop into the gravel.
Yeah.
So
that's why it took him a while to get going again. Well done, Yuki Tsunoda, for getting going. This is the 5th red flag of this qualifying session then, which actually equals the record for the most since this format was first adopted in 2006. Imola 2022, Ted, we had 5 red flags that day as well.
Remember it well. Yeah, you've got a feel for Alex Albon, still on the front row, Crofty. I mean, I know we've got 3 minutes 31 seconds left in the session. Anything can happen once they restart, but still on the front row of the grid. And this is why I think Williams will try everything, possibly at the expense of Colapinto's car. Just want to put that out there to try and get Albon's ready. Even though, as you say, he has made, quote, a right mess of it. So we'll see what they can do. But with that, if it stays anywhere near a front row of the grid start, the possibility of points and the possibility... This is going to be one of those Grand Prix, isn't it, Crofty, where Constructors' Championships and Drivers' Championships points are made. It's one of those funny Grand Prix that we'll look back on at the end of the season and say, well, Brazil, that was where, you know, Williams outscored Alpine, or Alpine, look at Esteban Ocon keeping his car out of the barrier and a great starting position of P4 in their particular fight in the Constructors. Sorry, come in.
I was about to say, Alpine are only 3 points behind Williams, and at the moment, Esteban Ocon starting 2 places below Alex Albon. Oh, yes.
No, only 1 now after yesterday.
You're right.
Yeah, Gasly, that's right, because Gasly, they need 4 in order to beat Alpine. Sorry, Alpine need 4 points over Williams because of the Williams better finishing position in Azerbaijan. And they got 2 of them yesterday with Pierre Gasly with a fantastic performance. Yeah, Esteban Ocon really making amends for his disappointing sprint qualifying yesterday.
Yes, you've got to be in it to win it.
You do.
And if you stayed in it, well...
There's only 7 going to be left in it when we get to Q3.
And so once again, you want to be at the end of the pit lane. You want to get, people with brooms have the right to accept the adulation of the crowd here. They've done a sterling effort, and then we just sweep over any loose bits of debris with the quad bike there. You want to be right at the front of this queue once again, and that's why the minute we get a time that's set, here we go, 9:08. Just flashed, off you go, get out the garage. Unplug the umbilical cord, you're gonna have to wait a bit. Down at McLaren, Esteban Ocon. They're speedy down at Alpine and getting that car right to the end. Charles Leclerc is gonna get stuck behind about 3 or 4 cars here.
And the reason they're not waiting this on this occasion at Ferrari is that with only 3 minutes 31 seconds to go, Crofty, you need to crack on with it and you'll get 2 laps.
Yeah.
If you dawdle along for too long, you won't get that second lap. And we all know, as we've seen through the session, that the second lap is the one that's counting for these drivers. But now that you've got 4 cars there, George Russell might as well wait for another 2 minutes and then join the back of the queue.
If I was Esteban Ocon, I'd find trouble selecting first gear and wait about 10 seconds when the green light starts. Because
oh, you're naughty, Croft.
But why not? At the moment, he is ahead of a Mercedes and a Ferrari on the grid.
I would, instead of waiting, that could get you in trouble, the stewards, I would just dawdle along the pit exit.
That's
a very narrow pit exit road. That's what I would.
But then if you've had trouble selecting the gears, I'm sure that's happened from time to time.
It'd be harder to have that argument in the stewards room, I would think.
I said cramping me fingers, it just wouldn't work.
As someone who's been to the stewards room, talking to someone who hasn't.
We think there'll be some Class 1 raining starting imminently, which will last to the end of the session.
Class 1 rain, that light drizzle, as they say.
Mist.
When did you ever lie to the stewards?
I don't think I did. That's why I probably always lost when I went to the stewards room.
Well, when did
I did. The worst one was, I don't know if it was a GP2 race in Valencia. Remember that street circuit, Valencia?
Yes.
And I
when you all ran out of fuel?
Yeah, well, it was the day after, and I crashed into Vitaly Petrov. And we went to the stewards room, and I just went, let's all go. We've all got flights to catch. I made a mistake.
Lando, difficult message for me to pass. If the conditions are slower, just be sensible. Obviously, the race is in a few hours.
Difficult, but I think entirely sensible, because they'll have seen what's happening at other teams, and McLaren, what they don't want is a very stressful couple of hours trying to rebuild a car when Lando or Oscar are trying to push it beyond the capabilities of the track currently.
And the subtext of that is your championship rival is 17th on the grid, and we have a chance to pull 26 points on him today.
Absolutely. This could be quite the day in the championship battle, and could make the final triple header.
Yeah.
Quite the anticipation. Vegas to come after this. Qatar with a sprint race to come after Vegas, and then Abu Dhabi for the denouement of this Formula One season. A record-long 24 Grand Prix season in 2024.
Ted's absolutely right. This next few hours can have huge ramifications for the World Championship battle. So, yeah, whatever you were planning to do on Sunday, cancel it and make sure you're parked in front of the television.
Well, I did say get the beef in the oven a bit earlier. Make sure that you finish off your Sunday lunch a little bit quicker. We're on air with the build-up from 2 o'clock in the UK. Lights out at 3:30. You never really want to miss a Brazilian Grand Prix. It's always a highlight, especially to come to, and I'm sure to watch as well. But this one, with Max Verstappen potentially making his way through the field, trying to score points from P17 on the grids, and potentially Lando Norris starting on pole. This could be quite a Brazilian Grand Prix, but we have not yet finished setting the grid. And we've got 3 minutes and 15 seconds to go, and I'm glad to see that Esteban Ocon found his first gear, no problem whatsoever, and he's out on the track.
Look at the head bobbing around. This is the sort of bumpy surface that the drivers have all been talking about. But you have to say, in terms of the wet conditions, there's not been a huge amount of complaining about grip on a new surface or drainage, actually. So
Lando Norris there, tyres maybe a little bit cold, was almost on the receiving end of a complaint or two, but he had that snap, lives to fight another day.
So, just as a reminder, we're going to have 7 cars on the track for this final run. We still have the RBs only now leaving the pit lane, so they have not given themselves much time here to do the second lap. In fact, they're just going to do the 1 lap. That's a completely different approach to everybody else. And George Russell is still in the pit, so he's going for tyre temperature in the blankets and also just 1 lap. That's putting a lot of faith in the driver's confidence to build over just 1 lap here.
But we know George Russell could do it, and he has done it in the past as well. 2 minutes to go. Oh, and Esteban Ocon locks up, and that is going to be the end of his chances on this lap, but he will have time to get round and maybe start another.
Yeah, for these drivers, this lap is just about getting the right track position, getting the right visibility, and getting the right temperature for the next one.
Yeah, you can see he's lost that half a second already. Lando Norris has overtaken him on the track, and he is flying down the Retta Reposta currently, and his teammate Oscar Piastri is flying behind him, and Charles Leclerc is now making his way through the center S's as Lando Norris puts in a 21.4, and that's his best first sector time that we've seen so far. So there is improvement in this track, but Oscar Piastri hasn't found it on this lap.
Yeah, I think Oscar's been stuck behind George Russell coming out of the pits, and maybe Oscar's taking time just build it up. Norris has decided he's going for it. He's not thinking about building temperature. He's going for it straight away. In a way, it's a smart thing to do, because if we get another yellow or a red, and there's a high chance, then it's worth pushing for the lap.
Esteban Ocon with the fastest middle sector of this final part of qualifying. The track is getting grippier and a little bit drier, and these times can all improve as Norris puts in his personal best. for the middle sector. The man who's on provisional pole, Lando Norris, is going faster and faster as Ocon finishes his lap, still in 4th fastest, but his times were getting much better. Lawson's improving too as Norris to the line he goes. Provisional pole has been extended by Lando Norris. That 1:24.0 puts him in pole position by over half a second. Oscar Piastri now has it all to do on this final lap, and he's locked up. And that's Oscar Piastri's chance is gone, and he's done very well to avoid the barriers. Charles Leclerc will get to the line to stay in 6th place, but now this is the lap for Charles Leclerc.
He's got a yellow, Crofty. It was yellow. The panel was flashing on the left.
So he has to slow down, lift off, but he then goes through that yellow flag zone and can keep going once more. Is the track offering up enough grip for him to make up enough time? Liam Lawson is making up time with 2 personal bests, and George Russell has a personal best, and Charles Leclerc, even though he lifted off, has a personal best through the 1st sector. Here then comes Liam Lawson for RB, back in that seat once again. Best qualifying 10th. He's on the front row. Wow! Liam Lawson, that is a sensational drive here in Interlagos. And once more back in Formula One, announcing his credentials as Yuki Tsunoda replaces him on the front row, and Lando Norris goes even faster through the middle sector. Ocon goes 3rd fastest, splits the 2 RBs. Told you this track was getting grippier. That's exactly what Lando Norris needs to know as he crosses the line and extends his advantage even more. Singing in the rain, Lando Norris is on pole position. But can anyone stop him from here? George Russell flying towards the line in his Mercedes. Where can he put this car? He's on the front row. Brilliant effort from George Russell with just 1 lap in Q3. And Charles Leclerc stays 6th after having to lift off through that 1st sector. Oscar Piastri is going to qualify a lowly spot here in this McLaren because he's not improving. I think also aborts this lap and pits. And it was a struggle from start to finish for so many drivers out there in qualifying, but for Lando Norris, it is a 5th pole in 7 races, and it's easy like a Sunday morning.
Fantastic lap there, absolutely fantastic. Looks like my bet on Oscar went completely down the drain, and along with his lockup at turn 1. Yuki Tsunoda in 3rd place, brilliant from him. But I have to say, George Russell, they put a lot of faith in him, finding the grip and attacking it on that single lap, as they did with Tsunoda, as they did with Lawson. And in the end, I think that approach of staying in the pits.
All right, Yuki Tsunoda P3 tomorrow.
Well done team. All of us.
I think that approach of staying in the pits, keeping the temperature of the blanket. I was saying before, we'll see which approach works. You'd have to say 3 out of the top 5 did that particular approach, but Norris head and shoulders above everybody else.
Yuki Tsunoda, highest ever grid spot and best ever qualifying in Formula One. Liam Lawson, best ever qualifying in Formula One. Esteban Ocon was 3rd in Belgium and starts 4th here. 3rd in Belgium in 2018, so 1 place below his best ever grid spot. Alex Albon was on the front row before that crash, and we'll start in P7 for Oscar Piastri. Big disappointment for him. He just couldn't hook up a lap in that final part. Massive disappointment for Aston Martin. Where would Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll have been had they managed to keep their cars on the track? And like I say, it was a struggle for so many. For Hamilton, who didn't get out of Q1. For Verstappen, the red flag catching him at just the wrong time, and that 5-place penalty compounding his dismal morning so far. Sergio Perez only 13th. Carlos Sainz crashing and qualifying only 14th. You know, but as the song says, in the end for Norris, it was easy like a Sunday morning. And when we got to Q3, there really was only going to be 1 man on pole.
I don't think there was anything easy about that session. It was an hour and 45 minutes, Crofty, nearly the length of the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And
might have to go for a lie down in a minute.
Yeah, it's been a very stressful time. And Yuki Tsunoda, look at this. He's so happy. You almost need to remind him there's a race to come after this.
Yeah.
It's, but yeah, no, he did a great job there, and he and the team. You know, they decided and put faith in their different approach and stuck with it, as did this man, George Russell there, and it worked out for them, but it took a lot of confidence from the drivers to achieve that.
So McLaren claim both pole positions this weekend. Lando Norris on pole. Pole's won 8 of the last 10 Grand Prix here at Interlagos, and Yuki Tsunoda, celebrating with his crew, has been noted by race control for failing to follow race director's instructions.
I saw that. I think he was heading to the grid. I think he thought the interviews were going to be on the grid, and I saw him turn into the pit lane at the last minute across the apron.
Well, I hope they let him off and there's no penalty there. James Hinchcliffe has the microphone and he's with the top 3.
Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Lando Norris, pole sitter for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. 8th pole of your career, but this one did not come easy. Lando, just talk to us about the entire qualifying, Q1, Q2, Q3, conditions changing, red flags, threw everything at you, but you still came out on top.
Yeah, it was a lot going on today, but super happy because I was struggling a lot at the beginning of qualifying. I had a lot of work to do. So I was not comfortable at all. So to end up on pole, I worked at it a lot through qualifying. I had a lot of areas I need to improve on, but I did exactly that. So a little surprised again. I mean, I've been surprised a little bit lately, but a little bit surprised to be on pole. But some nice laps. I felt good in the end, and a good result for us.
From the driver's seat, how tough is it when every time you're on the racetrack over that qualifying session, conditions are changing, sometimes even lap to lap, it's changing. How tough is it to judge where the limit is?
Probably more than it looks on TV at times. It's just, you're always trying to find that next little bit, but I mean, you saw how many people were going off and crashing and locking up, so it was easy to end up badly, you know, and end up in a wall or do something where you might not even make the race later today, you know, so that risk reward was not easy today, especially from where I was in Q1. I found it very tough to know how much more can I push. So that's why I'm happy, because it's relieving qualifying after something like this. So very happy at the same time.
So right before that last screen, after that final red, Will Joseph came on the radio and said, hey, huge opportunity here. Let's not do anything silly.
Yeah.
You still pushed. You still went faster every lap, but let's look ahead to the race. Obviously, from a championship standpoint, huge implications. Does that at all change your mindset going into the event, or is it just eyes forward going for the win?
Sorry. No, eyes forward. I mean, I got some quick guys behind. George put in a nice lap. Yuki's been flying in the wet all day today, so it's never easy in these conditions. It's never as much as just settling down and getting on with it. As that is what I would like to do. It's not always the easiest thing, you know. So we'll see. We'll prepare well. I hope we can get a race in. That will be a good start, and excited to see what we can do.
Yeah, no man wants a race to happen more than this guy. Lando Norris, your pole sitter. George Russell, incredible result here. It's been a bit of a struggle for you guys with this race car around this newly paved track. Big cheers from the crowds for the effort, though. You must be one of the guys that was kind of happy when you pulled up this morning and it still looked like it was going to be a wet session.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always love coming to Sao Paulo, obviously, such great memories from a few years ago. And after yesterday, it was so tough just waiting, and you know, all the fans stayed out. And honestly, this morning, I was so impressed coming into the track at 6 o'clock. Everybody was queuing, everybody wanted to be here, and really pleased to be lining up P2.
Now let's talk about that coming into the track at 6 o'clock. This is a very different Sunday for you. This is not normally how your Grand Prix Sundays go. How does having qualifying this morning, having the race brought up a little bit earlier, change how you prepare and you focus on the race?
I love that, to be honest. Reminded me of the karting days, you know, waking up, having breakfast in your race suit, and just going out there and driving. So, yeah, maybe the guys need to have a bit of a think about the format moving forward. Maybe this is the one, you know, qualifying Sunday morning. As I said, it was a great session, but let's see what we can do in the race.
Absolutely. You won here in 22. Let's see if you can do it again today. Cheers. And up next, big cheers from the crowd for Yuki Tsunoda. Congratulations, Yuki. Top 3 start here in Sao Paulo. Best career start under incredibly difficult conditions. Just walk us through your session and the challenge of getting that perfect lap in those tricky conditions.
Yeah, it was very tricky. Certainly, I enjoyed it. I think we had a good pace from straight away, extreme. Had a couple of mistakes, but yeah, had a bit of luck as well. I think overall as a team, including Liam as well, we did a really, really good job.
Yuki, as a driver, how tough is it to balance that risk versus reward, especially when you're seeing other drivers crash, have incidents, when you know the Grand Prix is just in a few hours and that a big incident could eliminate you from even starting the race?
Yeah, I mean, this track especially probably is one of the trickiest track. You know, once you start building confidence and you try to over-push a little bit, you have massive consequence like we saw multiple cars today. And I had one big moment, and luckily I was away from the barrier. But yeah, it's certainly also the track you want to nail it. But yeah, I feel much better than yesterday. The car felt good. I think we had a good pace in the rain as well, so it's a good place to start for today.
And just real quickly, your teammate Liam Lawson also up there. Huge opportunity for you guys in the constructors battle with both Haas cars going out early. Are you guys very focused on collecting maximum points and trying to close that gap?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we are slightly behind P6, especially Haas, so we need definitely catching up. And this is the moments that we want to maximize opportunity. So yeah, as a team, we do as much as we can to score as much as possible.
We've been super quick in the wet, probably doing the rain dance a little bit before the Grand Prix. Best of luck.
Thank you.